Hello students, today we are going to do the concluding stanzas of the poem Ode to West Wind. Stanza 4. This stanza has an autobiographical touch. The poet relates his petty condition and prays to the west wind to recreate his inner self. The poet first puts forth his unfulfilled wish to be a leaf that west wind carries, a cloud that west wind swipes, a wave that gets accelerated with the west wind. He wants to share the same freedom, the same force and fierce speed of the west wind. The poet here mentioned that his own original nature is as swift and tameless as the west wind itself. He mentioned that if he were a toy boy, he would have been the companion of the west wind and would surpass the wild speed of the uncontrollable. If he were as free as the west wind, he would never have prayed to it, because he would have the same vigor and fierceness in him as the west wind. But the shattering circumstances of his life have chained him. He falls upon the thorns of life, he bleeds and is in pain and misery. The heavy weight of sorrows and problems have been controlling over his free spirit, which was once as swift, as tameless, as uncontrollable, as sovereign as the west wind itself. Shelley prays to the west wind to lift him from the earth and impart in him energy, so that he may be able to break through all the restraints and become light and fleet like the leaf, the cloud, and the wave under the wind's influence. Stanza 5. The concluding stanza is an optimistic one, giving the message of hope to the new generation. The poet prays to the west wind to make him its lyre and fill his heart with the same music that it fills the forest with. Though he is in the autumn of his life and he has become a dry leaf, yet the spirit of his is filled with vigor. The poet requests the west wind to be one with him. The west wind, who is both a destroyer and a preserver and who buries dry leaves for rebirth, the poet wants the west wind to spread his dead thoughts all over the globe, as there are some flames in an extinguished fire, and west wind spreads ashes and sparks, kindling the flames once more. He wants the west wind to spread the message of hope to the sleeping and unaware world, play the trumpet of a prophecy to all those who are suffering and are hopeless, and tell them that they are passing through winters, then spring is not far behind. There is alliteration in the poem where we find O wild west wind. The west wind is personified. The autumn is personified. The spring, the Mediterranean Sea, all are personified. There are a number of similes used to capture the spirit of the west wind in the words like flying leaves are compared with ghost fleeing after hearing the chant of an exhaustus. This adds a dramatic note to the lines. The buried leaves to a corpse in a grave which will get rebirth, showing the cycle of nature. The blooming of the flowers in spring to a flock of sheep. They are all beautiful similes. Then there are more similes where the clouds are compared to the leaves of the trees which are shaken. The movement of the clouds due to the west wind with the hair covered face of Maynard's, which captures that the west wind was so fierce that it made the clouds cover the whole sky. There are metaphors in the poem, and these are the most beautiful metaphors of the English language. We have metaphors where the leaves are lifeless, as if they are suffering from some epidemic. The heaven and the ocean symbolize two great trees which bear the leaves of the clouds. The whole sky as the vast sepulchre of a dying year. The metaphor comparing the sorrows of life to a thorny bed and the blood to deep pain which is felt by the poet is perhaps the best comparison someone has ever made in the English language. There are more comparisons where the autumn season symbolizes the old age of Shelley, and he has become as lifeless as the falling leaves lying on the earth. The use of imagery is perfect, and the readers seem to experience the scene actually coming before their eyes. The poem is composed in Italian verse form called the terza rima, Each stanza is planned like a sonnet with iambic pentameter. It is a prayer to the west wind, which is Shelleyan symbol of change through destruction. It is an ineffectual vision of universal revolution. The poem was written in a wood that skirts the Arno near Florence on a day that when the tempestuous wind was at once wild. Therefore, after reading the poem, one may conclude that this is one of the best ode of English literature. The picturesque scenery of the west wind on the earth, in the sky, and on the sea are described so vividly that it makes us travel in the world of nature far from artificiality. With the correct use of imagery, the poet does not forget to go deep into the very soul of the west wind. He bows to the powerful west wind and prays to regenerate his withering thoughts and make this world get rid of unawareness. Metaphors succeed to metaphor and simile to simile with wild rapidity, incorporating one thought into the other. The poet, with each stanza, covers the effect of the west wind on the earth, the sea, and the sky, respectively. He calls the west wind both destroyer and preserver, and prays to the west wind to destroy his past and preserve his thoughts for the regeneration of a bright future. Shelley, in this unsurpassingly great composition, expresses his curiosity of wonder, intellectual attitude of inquiry, love for nature, deep agony of heart, and he does this all using some of the best metaphors. Thus, perfect explanation of west wind blended with exact technicalities makes this verse immortal. Thank you.